Alrighty guys, hello and welcome back to the show. Today we are going to be doing another Supreme Commander Science video. I'm going to be comparing T2 static artillery emplacements. Which one is better? What are the pluses and minuses to each of the factions whenever it comes to the static T2 artillery emplacements? So let's go ahead and get into it. This is going to be a breakdown of the damage per second, accuracy, and buffs that you can give to the static artillery emplacements at the second tier. They do not all cost the same from a resource perspective, so we'll first frame the conversation with what resource expenditures actually look like. This is unlike a lot of the other unit classes, like I believe destroyers, for example, are uniform in their cost across the different factions, while certain ones have much better capabilities in ship-to-ship combat or other utility purposes than others. So getting into it, the miasma, as the current balance stands, the miasma costs 2,079 mass, 14,850 energy. The Clink Hammer is at 18,900 mass, 13,500 energy. The Gunther, coming in at the cheapest, is 1,680 mass at 12,000 energy. And the Zutham is 19,095. So any of you guys born out there in 1995, you guys are born in the year of the Zutham, and 14,250 energy. So previously going into this, I thought that all of these static emplacements were by and large the same. They might have had like subtle tweaks from a damage perspective, but that by and large they were all pretty much the same. So this video and the testing that took place in this video came with a lot of surprises for me, which is why I wanted to go ahead and make this video, write out the script. That way you guys can also share in these surprises that I experienced. From an application perspective, T2 artillery is most often used in two applications that, as far as I've seen. First off, it's fortifying and bombarding forward fire bases. So you upgrade your commander to T2, set him up on the front lines. He starts building a fire base. You might have a couple of point defense, a flak, some tactical missile defense, and then a couple of static artillery emplacements at T2 to bombard your opponent's fire base. This is usually whenever kind of the initial disorganization or the initial fights at T1 have kind of died down a little bit and players start digging in for the long haul. The other application that I see is to protect against naval attack. We see this a lot, at least I use this a lot. If I play Setons, I usually play on the forward position, so I pretty often have to build T2 artillery whenever one of, if not both of the pawns gets lost by my teammates, and I have to protect myself against ships. This is not usually a long-term solution. This is more forestalling the inevitable. So let's get into the first test. The first test is going to be purely about raw damage. So we want to see what the damage differences are with each of these artillery emplacements. There are a couple of assumptions we're making here. The first assumption is that we are going to be using perfect accuracy here. Now, before you guys all go jump into the comments and start yelling at me because these T2 static artillery emplacements do not have perfect accuracy, we're going to test their accuracy in a separate test. So hold off on your comments. Don't start typing down there yet. The second one is that we are not going to be ringing these artillery installations with power generators. They're going to just be on their own, firing at the standard firing rate without any assistance. Even though you should always be ringing your T2 power, or your T2 artillery emplacements with power generators, I wanted to keep this test as sterile as possible. So I set up one shield generator, T2 UEF, and tested how long it takes for two of the artillery from each faction to break the shield and destroy the generator. We're using two artillery emplacements here because one artillery emplacement from a couple of the factions actually will not break a T2 shield, which was, again, one of the surprises that I ran into. We're counting generator destruction as a shot landing after the shield has fallen because, again, we're testing for perfect accuracy. The reason why I'm doing a shield generator is because it is a big target. So even with the firing randomness that these T2 emplacements have, it is not big enough to ever miss the shield dome. So this allows for 100% accuracy impacting on the shield, and we'll just assume that one shell will take out the actual shield generator structure itself, which it will. So let's get into the results. So the miasma takes it with a landslide, really, needing only one volley to drop the shield, where the other members needed 4 to 5 volleys to drop the shields. So one volley to drop the shields, second volley takes out the actual shield generator structure itself. So the miasma wins. Aeon once again showing off their high alpha damage from their T2 artillery, much like we see in the Exodus, as well as some of their other emplacements. There was a lot of weirdness going on, though, with the miasma, with the way that damage is being dealt. So I noticed that instead of it being like a lump sum, shell impacts and it deals all the damage at once, the miasma deals it in little micro kind of damage over time almost, instead of it just being one fell swoop. So this is just a weird thing. I'm not sure if this is a bug or anything like that, but it doesn't really impact the way that it doesn't really impact how it works in practice. It was just something that I noticed, and I didn't see it notated anywhere on the database, so this came as a surprise to me. I also discovered the actual damage that the miasma has varies quite wildly from shell to shell. I saw some shells dealing about 2,900 damage, which would be pretty close to in line with 144 DPS on the unit database, but some shells were dealing 5,700 damage, which means that this is kind of random, and I could not find any particular pattern. It was just some shells would deal double the damage and almost double the damage of other shells. So I'm not really sure if this is designed, but it was something that I did find and something that should be taken into account. That being said, the damage per second that is outlined on the database is 144 damage per second. If we're using the 2,900 number, which is on the low end of the scale, damage per second comes in at more like 138.1. But if you use the 5,700, which I did observe a couple of times, the DPS can get as high as 271.4, which is near double, almost triple some of the other T2 static artillery emplacements. So again, not sure if this is a bug, but it's definitely something that you guys should keep in mind whenever you are either utilizing Aeon to potentially abuse the miasma's strength, but to also keep in mind if you are up against an Aeon firebase, that if they are building miasmas will take apart your shields very quickly, and you will have to fall back and retreat relatively quickly without some sort of support. So moving on to the Zutham. The Zutham here takes second, taking about 1 minute and 14 seconds to destroy the shield generator at an effective damage per second of 114. Clink hammers are in third at 1 minute and 33 seconds to kill the shield generator. The damage per second on the clink hammer lines up to be about 95, not 100 on the database. All the numbers on the database say approximate DPS, so take those with a grain of salt. The devs undoubtedly put approximate DPS there so that if balance comes and tweaks a couple of little things, they don't have to go and update all of these unit records. But it's something that you guys should be aware of, that the damage per second will vary a good amount on the database, and this is not new. We've seen this in the battleships, we saw this in destroyers, we've seen this in tanks. Pretty much all of the units, the damage per second is going to vary a little bit from what is advertised in the database. The Gunther rounds out the field in fourth at 1 minute and 54 seconds, taking an additional volley to bring down the shield generators, and it has an effective damage per second of 83.3. So it's about a third of the larger shells from the miasma. So Gunther's not looking too great here at this point from raw damage per second. Let's move on to test number 2, accuracy. So if you can't hit your target, damage isn't really going to help you a whole lot, is it? So here I logged the hits and misses of 20 shells on a destroyer near the outskirts of the range of the artillery. This is also incidentally where I noticed some of the weird variances in the miasma shell damage as I was logging the shells hits and misses. This was basically like a really boring game of Battleship. This took like 40 minutes to get through each one of these emplacements, firing 20 shells and logging the hits and misses. So hopefully you guys get some enjoyment out of this. And I had nothing better to do other than just watch the damage come in on these destroyers. The unit database logs accuracy as firing randomness, and it's represented by an integer value. I'm not really sure how to interpret that integer value, so whenever I took the accuracy values, I put them in a percentage value, which to me makes a little bit more sense. So in our 20 shells, if 10 hit, it has a 50% accuracy rate. So let's get into the results. The miasma again leads the pack at roughly 75% accuracy, so 15 out of 20 shells landing. The miasma is looking really good here in both damage and accuracy. The clink hammer and the Zutham come in second and third at 65% and 60% accuracy respectively. This could be variance. And these guys probably have relatively close accuracy values. This is just variance in the random number generation. So I would not call one shell statistically significant, and I would say that the Klinkhammer and the Zoothhammer are basically tied here. The Gunther brings up the rear at about 30% accuracy, which seems obscenely low. I ran the test twice though, and it was the same result. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with the Gunther there, but the Gunther can't really even seem to like, I'm trying to think of some old adage that means it can't hit anything. It can't hit the broadside of a barn door. I don't know, something like that. So the Gunther is not looking too great. And I realize, yes, that a lot of these artillery pieces are used to fire at large groups of units. But just because these artillery pieces are firing at large groups of units, I don't think gives them an excuse to have a low accuracy rating. So accuracy is still something that you need to take into account, especially whenever you are bombarding the enemy firebase. One of the things that you want to be taking out is the actual shield generator itself. And if you can't hit the shield generator, you will end up losing the bombarding match between the two firebases. So moving on to the last thing that I want to talk about, I have it labeled in my script as a test, but it's really more of just an interesting finding, but it's power generator buffs on T2 static artillery. So in all of my templates, I have the Klinkhammer, the Gunther, the Miasma surrounded by T1 power generators to increase the firing rate. So this is something that everybody should be doing. If you guys didn't know that increases the firing rate on your artillery, it also works for heavy artillery at tier 3 as well. So you definitely want to be ringing your artillery with power generators so that it can A, reduce the power consumption, and B, increase the firing rate. So normal firing cycle is roughly every 21 seconds. Ringing a T2 static artillery with power generators drops that down to 17 seconds, so a little under a 20% improvement. Like I said, this is something that you should be doing in all fire bases if at all possible. This did also get me wondering though if higher tier power generators make a bigger improvement, because this is essentially adjacency bonus, and adjacency bonus does fluctuate on the power generators depending on which tier you actually go with. And lo and behold, it does actually make a difference. So tier 2 power generators give a better buff than tier 1 power generators for firing rate, dropping the firing cycle to about 15 seconds. And tier 3 actually drops it to 13 seconds. So this is extremely impractical to ring your static artillery with T3 power generators, both from a cost perspective as well as from a space perspective, because shielding that's going to be rough. But it's something that I thought was really interesting, and so it's something I wanted to include in the video. Okay, so let's kind of wrap things up and come to a conclusion. So the Miasma is pretty undecided, pretty much the winner here, packing both the better accuracy as well as more damage than any of the other units in its class, with higher damage up to exceeding 3 times as much damage per second as some of the other T2 static artillery emplacements. So Miasma is definitely the clear winner here, and the Gunther is really the wrapping up the field here. The Gunther really not having great showing, both from an accuracy perspective as well as from a damage perspective. I mean, I guess you could kind of say the Gunther might not hit very hard, but it sure can't hit anything either. So, and that's rough for me to say, just because I really like playing Cybran, and you guys see me play Cybran probably 3 out of 4 games that I end up posting to the channel. So I really like Cybran a lot. It's kind of a bummer that the Gunther here kind of sucks, but hey, the faction is balanced and is definitely stronger in some other ways, like its stealth. So I'll go ahead and wrap the video there. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you guys learned something. I know I sure as hell did, especially with some of these shell damage variances and accuracy percentages. This was a really interesting one for me to put together, and one that I really enjoyed. If you guys like what you saw, there's a whole lot of content on this channel, both additional science videos like this, where we pit different factions, unit classes against each other, talk about adjacency bonuses, economy, when you should do certain things within the economy. We also have my ladder matches, my custom games. I post a good amount of gameplay here as well. And then I also like to cast games. So I like to, if you guys have a replay that you want to see me cast and post on the channel, send it my way. But I also do post a good amount of casts. I really enjoy doing casts. I need to do another one here pretty soon. But anyway, I will stop flapping my gums, and I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.